Okay. And now I'm going to do a screen share. And remember, if you have any questions, please unmute yourself and ask questions. The more questions, the better. When we left off yesterday, or I think it was yesterday, all my days are jumbled together. Oh, before, yeah, I'll finish that in a minute. Me rambling. We were talking about immune system, and I was going over the process of how our cells come to life. And one of the things that I'd mentioned was all cells originate where? Sorry, my cat's having a cat moment. All cells originate in the bone, right? So, and we know that's the marrow. And we know a lot of them cells move on, they travel, they make a journey to the thymus, and they become T cells. And there's different forms of T cells. Some of them stay B cells, B for bone, T for thymus. And the main difference that, as long as y'all understand, is keeping it really simple. Our B cells attack outside of other cells, while the T cell goes inside and fights inside the cell. All right. I told you I'd post this video, but like I said, it is complex. It is. She's an RN. She's talking about the process of the differences between the B cell and the T cell. It's a very good video. Don't feel like, oh my goodness, what'd she just say? The parts that she just starts talking, it seems like in a foreign language, just ignore, and she gets back to our level, is, you know. So it's a good video. It's why I have it here, but I'll post that. I talked to you yesterday about the spleen, correct? And I told you how I envision the spleen as a recycling center, right? And I already talked to you how that it filters, but it doesn't just, it scans and filters everything that enters it, and anything that's useful sends back out to the body to be used. And then it stores anything that needs to be processed for waste, for elimination. And it's holds about a cup or so of blood, and that blood and those cells can actually be, in states of dire emergency, called back into use. And I told you that if it's injured, it's a very quick way to bleed to death because it is so vascular. Sorry, cat, still having another cat moment. We know that the spleen is located in the upper left quadrant, right? Y'all remember quadrants. And we know it's kind of behind the stomach. So if you've ever had, like my son had mono in November, and mononucleosis is where the monocytes become enlarged, and it's from the Epstein-Barr virus. And during that time, one of the common things is the spleen can become enlarged. Fortunately, his never did, but it causes extreme fatigue, and it can cause spleen enlargement and a few other things. And he's a lot better now. He still kind of feels the side effects, believe it or not. After that virus, you feel the side effects, you know, little fatigue and this and that. Sometimes 6 months to a year. All right. I had it when I was 11, and I missed an entire year of school. So it's crazy. This is a picture of your spleen, showing you, like I said, where it sits and how it is highly vascular. Michael, can you control that cat? Next, we talked about the tonsils and the adenoids, and I already explained to you they're like catcher's mitts and they prevent infection, right? And then you can visualize these you can't. But sometimes when they do a tonsillectomy, they remove both. And they do play a major part of our immune system by catching and filtering anything that could be harmful to us. And then we're moving on to immune systems in our bodies of defense. How does your body recognize and defend itself against bacteria, viruses, and substances that appear foreign or harmful, right? And everyone's, believe it or not, works in a general, same fashion, but all of us have individual immune systems. Like if you was to take my immune system, for example, you don't want it. It is a decreased immune system because of multiple sclerosis. And it is not as healthy as the average person. And so if I get an infection or I get some type of illness, it may take my body quite a bit longer to fight it off, right? So everyone has variants of how strong, weak, or capable their immune system is. Here's my nerd joke for the day. Why don't ants get sick? Because they have antibodies. Get it? Antibodies? Because remember, what were antibodies? Those were what our B cell, remember? They write down and they take the little notes and they remember anything that's come into the body. So never mind. I thought it was nerd and funny, so it's okay. And then I posted this video, and I want to know every single one of you watched it, yes?
Yes.
No.
If you have not, guys, this is one of the absolute best videos. It explains the immune response. And when I tell you, I know I say that about every video, but darn it, I mean it with this one. I really, really want you to watch that. And I promise you, it'll give you understanding, and it's really cute. I'll give you a really great explanation of how our immune system goes into action. Our leukocytes. Now, this is a word I want you to write down. I want you to highlight and put stars next to, because a leukocyte is a white blood cell. And that's exactly how I want you to write it. Leukocyte equals white blood cell equals WBC, because that's its abbreviation. And I want you to highlight that, star it, and put little neon lights, because that's our first. You're going to need to know that for the rest of your career. And you may hear it interchanged multiple ways. I need to know their WBC. Or what was that patient's leukocyte level? Or what was, we're gonna check their white blood cells. So you need to know these are all interchangeable. But most commonly, we just abbreviate it and we'll say WBC. All right? So, what does a leukocyte do? It protects. And leuko is white, right? And there are two types of things that we, when we think of a leukocyte, we always think of them as protecting, but they're also there, like I said, as far as remembering. And we'll get into that, because there's multiple kinds of leukocytes. There's a few, and we're going to talk about them, okay? So if you take notes later, make sure you write that note down. A lymphocyte is our next term, okay? Now, a lymphocyte, they produce lymphokinase. All right, and you're like, what is that? Basically, here's the easy way to remember it. Lymphocytes, whenever there's inflammation, something swollen or inflamed, whenever there's itis, we see a larger amount of lymphocytes. So if a doctor's looking at a slide of blood and we see a large level of lymphocytes in that lets us know we probably have some chronic inflammation, All right. So lymphocytes, they secrete. I'm not so worried if you remember that they secrete lymphokinase or not. But what you need to know is lymphocytes equal inflammation. Okay? All right. There's another term. This is called phagocyte. Now, phagocyte is Pac-Man. And there's no better way that I can explain it. Because what are cells? There are certain cells that run around our body and they act just like Pac-Man. Wonk, 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 wonk. And if they find something that doesn't belong there, they grab it, they engulf it, and they dispose of it. And that process is called phagocytosis. All right? That's that process of engulfing and disposing. Okay? Make sure you remember that. You can put phagocytosis, phagocyte, and those are phagocytic cells. All right? And they get rid of anything that could cause us damage or harm in our body. And they do it by Pac-Man, right? Another type of a cell we're going to talk about. We're going to, if I'm not mistaken, no, I didn't. That. I don't know. Oh, I know why. Never mind. Neutrophils. Neutrophils. All right. These are a form of our white blood cells. Okay, but we'll get into the different kinds. I was mentioning them now because they are the most common phagocytic cell. Okay, so write that down. And so if you're writing phagocytes, the most common one is a neutrophil. And they mainly attack bacteria. Okay? All right. So here's where things might get a little bit more complex. But we're gonna take it all on in ease and learn this together. When we think of the term antibody, and we think of the term an immunoglobulin, I never can say that word, even though it should be something, but it just does not roll off my tongue. We can use those two words interchangeably, okay? When I was a little girl, I never had a great immune system. I had to go get shots, and they were called IgGs, and they stand for immunoglobulin something or another, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember, but it was to help my immune system. So if you see these words, just understand that they mean the same. They are interchangeable. But because of my tongue twistedness, we're going to stick with antibodies, okay? When we think of our antibodies, we think that all of our bodies working together, and they respond to an antigen. Remember that an antigen is what? Something that is foreign in the body. That could be a dust particle. That could be a strain of the cold. That could be the flu. That could be COVID. So that antibody, that antigen, or that something foreign has now entered. So if it's something that we've been exposed to, like the example I gave was chickenpox, varicella. So we had we were exposed to varicella, let's say when we were 6, and we had the whole rashy chickenpox and all that, and our body, because of our B cells, they come along, they make their little scrolls, and they remember, and they took a tiny, tiny bit of it, right? And they kept it for a memory. And so if we're ever exposed to varicella again, our antibodies, our B cells go into action, and they're like, aha, we still have part of this, and we remember what it is, and they know immediately how to recognize and get rid of it before it usually even causes us symptoms. Once antibodies have been produced by the body, they remain in the body. They are always ready to attack and neutralize any antigen or foreign body. Like example, the chicken pox, like I said. Now, I did post a video yesterday about vaccines, antibiotics, and antivirals. And has anybody had a chance to watch it? That's the Amoeba Sisters. And shout out to them because they are amazing. If you ever move on and you want to go into nursing or nurse practitioner, MD or something, their videos literally are, like godsend, because they have a video on everything, and they're excellent. Very, very smart ladies. And the video that I posted, they do an amazing job. And this one's pretty simplified. Some of theirs get really complex, even way over my head. But they do an amazing job of explaining the roles of these. And one of the things that they cover is vaccines. Now, this is something you may or may not be familiar with. Vaccine is an immunization, okay? It's the same principle. And everyone's like, well, no, let's just keep it simple for now, okay? A vaccine contains a weakened, and I kind of talked about this, a weakened amount of the disease or the organism, right? And I use the example, but there are different kinds. There are certain vaccines that use, like I said, a weakened one that's been beat up, and then they take a tiny bit of it and expose you to it so your body can make antibodies. Now, there are other type of vaccines where they take a dead version of it, all right, because it's still an antigen, it's still foreign, right? So your B cells are going to come along and memorize it. And then we have newer, more advanced ones where we're actually lab creating, where we take strands of the RNA and the DNA. So basically, they're what makes them whatever they are, their virus, whatever it is. We're taking a tiny bit of that and making vaccines that way. So there's multiple ways. But even because a vaccine is 99.9% for most of the vaccines that we have. And since there's that 1% chance that you could still possibly get said flu the year that you get the flu vaccine, yeah. But even if you do get the flu, what that vaccine will do is it will help lessen the symptoms. There have been cases of children who have had their measles, mumps, and rubella and ended up with the measles. But instead of it being devastating, just their entire body covered in all of the signs and all of the horrible symptoms and fever, they had very mild symptoms because their body was able to control it and get right on top of it very quickly because of the vaccine that they had received. That makes sense? Do we have any questions so far? No? Okay, then I'm moving on. Now, where things get a little complicated, and this is why I posted that video, and I'm going to repost the video, because then I'm going to put it, and I'm going to label it complement immunity. And it basically, this picture here is a little fuzzy, but basically what it does is it talks about adaptive immunity. And it talks about the difference between, I'm pointing at my screen like y'all can see my screen, adaptive. And basically it talks about naturally acquired versus artificially acquired, okay? And how these come about. And I can sit here and I can like try to explain this. This video does it and makes it a very easy with pictures, with the animation. It's wonderful. But basically something that is natural, we would think that, like you caught the cold, and now you naturally acquired it. So you have active antibodies. Naturally acquired passive means that, like, something that was passed from you, from your mother to you during from fetus or breast milk, right? And then there's a second category. It's still part of adaptive immunity, but it's the artificially acquired. Now that has an active and passive form as well. Active for artificially would be when you get a vaccine, because it's active, right? Because it's activating antibodies and so forth. And then the passive portion of it is basically like when you get boosters. So, you get your active tetanus, but you do have to go back once in a while and get that passive booster. You're not getting the whole thing over again, you're just getting boosters. Like I said, this can be complicating and very frustrating to understand, but the video that I'm gonna repost is very wonderful with explaining everything. Okay, real quick, I'm gonna pop back to this. This is a term I want you to write down and know. It's called immunosuppressant. Okay, so immune suppressant. And if to suppress something, what does that mean? It means to hold it down or prevent it, right? So an immunosuppressant is a type of medication or drug that doctors give patients to suppress their immune system. And I know your first response is going to be, why in the heck would we want to weaken or suppress somebody's immune system? There's a couple of great reasons. One, for like multiple sclerosis, for instance, it is an autoimmune disease. And what do we learn about autoimmune disease? It means that our body is attacking itself. So the doctor says, okay, let's give you medications to tell your immune system, look, chill out. Now, does it make you a little weaker? Yes, but it also stops attacking, okay? Another reason that these are given is, say, I have a niece right now, and she just found out she's got astroblastoma, and it's a brain cancer. And she is going through chemo, but before they could give her chemo, they had to give her immunosuppressants. They had to knock her immune system pretty much down to nothing. And the reason that they did that is because if they give her chemo, her body's automatically going to try to fight it and try to prevent the chemo from working properly. So she's been given these immunosuppressants, knock down her immune system, and they are now able to start chemo, and they're doing radiation to try to get this brain cancer in control. So those are the reasons that patients are given these drugs. There's other reasons, but those are the most common things we're going to see them for, is autoimmune diseases and cancer therapy, treatment, that kind of thing. Okay? There are 3 types of immunity. And this is what go ahead and write this down. And then, like I said, the video will explain everything. The types of immunity are active, passive, and innate. So write that down, because that'll be a question that you'll see. What are the types of immunity? And oh yeah, active, passive, and innate. Okay, and that was the chart. So here, let's explain. Innate, sometimes we call this like our natural, and it's, like I said, the parent to child, and skin, mucous membranes, tears, that kind of thing. It can also render many of the viruses and bacteria that have from entering into our bodies. So it's our defense barrier, and it is, like I said, it could be something like from the mother. And this is one of the reasons that you see a lot of people say breastfeeding, and why breastfeeding is so important. It boosts immune system and that kind of thing. But we still have our own innate as well, our skin and the mucous membranes, that kind of thing. So that's innate. And then active. Okay, active is you're not born. Okay, active is acquired. It means after you've been exposed, all right, to something like a virus or a bacteria. Now, there is artificially acquired active, and that makes sense. It's in the name, artificial. So how do we get that? A vaccine. And then there is passive, okay? Passive is not a permanent, okay? It can be natural or artificial. Okay. It could be an example, passive natural immunity, like the antibodies passed from the mother. Is that permanent? No. And then passive artificial is just like the tetanus. You've gotten the tetanus shot, but now we're just getting a booster. So like I said, I know it's complicated. Don't feel overwhelmed. The video does a wonderful job of explaining everything. You just make sure you write this down. Active, passive, and innate are the 3 types of immunity. All right, we're going to keep going. We're going to get into common disorders with the immune system. And bam, the first one. And see, y'all already know what this is because I've talked about this so many times. The first one is, you'd write it down because autoimmune disease. And it is a disease, like I just said, where your body attacks itself. And different autoimmune diseases produce or target specific areas. I had mentioned when we talked about the respiratory system, asthma being an autoimmune disease. What does it attack? The lungs. So that would be an example. Lupus is an autoimmune disease, and it's famous for going after the kidneys. Multiple sclerosis, it destroys myelin. It's wrapped around your cells of your nerves. So there's multiple types of autoimmune diseases, and each one of them kind of have their own thing they target. Now, some are just where they wreak havoc and they end up causing a lot of trouble to a lot of different areas, okay? So it just depends on the autoimmune disease that the patient have. Now, this is giving you examples. Multiple sclerosis, and asthma, celiac disease, psoriasis or eczema, rheumatoid arthritis. So RA, rheumatoid arthritis attacks, when you get that, it attacks the joints. And you're like, man. And you get lots of inflammation and stiffness and swelling. It's hard to move. Lupus, and I know it's pointing towards the heart because lupus can affect the heart, but it's also can affect kidneys. And then there's another one, Hashimoto's thyroiditis. It actually attacks the body's thyroid. So these are just some examples. I'm going to post this video as well. It's called A Walk Through Autoimmunity. And it is also, it's going to be one of the online labs. So everybody will need to make sure that they watch this, okay? the next, oh, before I move on to that, what would be the treatment for somebody with an autoimmune disease? Well, immunosuppressants are one, but believe it or not, that's what do you say? That's a last thing that a doctor would want to try. So let's say our patient's been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and do you think that they automatically want to throw them on something that is going to decrease their immune system? No. Let's try a steroid. Let's try something with anti-inflammatory properties first to manage that. So we always, the doctor will always try certain treatments and medications that have been proven to help, like especially like asthma. There's, the daily preventatives like Ceravent and Singularis to prevent an asthma attack. And these medications are better because they're not as taxing and hard on a patient's body as an immunosuppressant would be. So the immunosuppressants are usually one of the last things that they will try for patients who have autoimmune diseases. All right, next we're going to talk about the human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. Most of us already are very familiar with HIV. We have done pretty well in this country of getting the word out and making sure that everybody understands, hey, HIV is a virus that you can get from having sex of any kind, sharing drug needles, tattoos that aren't properly cleaned and sterilized, but anything that transmits body fluids, you could be exposed to HIV. Well, we know that HIV, one of its things, what do we learn about our T cells? When just yesterday's lecture, we talked about T cells, and I told you that T cells are made in where? T is for thymus. All right, and if you already had that in your head, very good. And so the thymus, we know it does what at puberty? Shuts off. It starts to shrink. It becomes inactive. So every T cell we're ever going to have is already made by the time we hit puberty. So if you get HIV at 25, and you say you don't get tested because you're scared, or you don't get tested because you just didn't think you had it, and a couple of years go by, and the HIV's actually this whole time been destroying your T cells, because that's what it does. And so when you go to the doctor's like, wow, I wish you would have come in earlier. We could have got you on antivirals sooner and stopped this, because you're not going to get more T cells. And this is why getting tested and why being right on top of it is so imperative. Because HIV now can be controlled. You can live a completely almost normal life with HIV if caught early, if caught when you still have enough T cells. My cousin has HIV positive, and the last that I spoke with her, her T cell count was wonderful, and her what they call viral load, how much of the virus that was identified in the body, was almost non-existent. And the reason why is because she was taking all of her antivirals and her medications. And so that's really good news. And that's how people nowadays are living so long. I'm going to post a story for those of y'all. You don't have to, but if you're a nerd like me, find it interesting. They've actually cured someone. That means that HIV is completely removed and gone from their body. This year, from a patient who had HIV, and they did that using a type of therapy involving stem cells. So we know that the three facts with HIV is that it can be caught from the fluids, it kills our T cells, but it can be treated if caught early with antivirals. Okay? Now, AIDS itself is a position, and when the very beginning we just didn't know enough. In the very beginning, we just thought it was all one thing, right? And they just said AIDS, AIDS. But then we learned, no, AIDS is actually that point. Once HIV has destroyed all of the T cells, there's a tiny little process, and that's called arcing. And you've actually gone from HIV to now you have AIDS. And that's acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. And AIDS is its advanced stage. This means you have no real immune system. You don't really have any way to protect yourself. And you become very vulnerable. And I know I've used my uncle multiple times. He was one of, in the late 80s, had HIV, didn't know he had it, and I think he found out, right as he was arcing. And he had had a parrot for years. The parrot had a fungal infection on its talon, and while cleaning it and giving it medication, he had picked up that fungal infection, something that a healthy person that just wouldn't happen. And then even if they did, it'd stay isolated to like maybe their finger or something, right? No, it went to his brain, and that's what killed him. And that's where there's a lot of big misconceptions is they think, oh, the person died of AIDS. Nobody dies from AIDS. People die because they don't have an immune system. And so they ultimately die from a paper cut that got infected, or a fungal infection to the brain, or pneumonia from the flu. So the whole purpose of understanding that is there is no cure for AIDS. We don't really even have treatment for AIDS. Once you have arced, you're basically a ticking time bomb. Anything and everything that you come around could be a possible pathogen that is what you're in. It causes your demise. We do know that preventing the body from going into that arc is how we keep people alive, right? Common symptoms that we see when this happens, HIV turning to AIDS, includes weight loss. One of the classic symptoms is night sweats, reoccurrent infections, fatigue. Women, we see lots of yeast infections because it's something their pH, the immune system, it messed up. So these are common things we see in the night sweats and real frail, thin looking. They look ill. They look sick. And we, as of right now, like I said, we have no way of reversing that arc. So once AIDS has been diagnosed, we can't get you back. We can't take you back. Oh, well, let's put you on this or give you that. Okay, now you're back to HIV. Now, be cool. Because your T cells are gone. Your immune system is destroyed. All right? I have a video, I'm going to post this as well. It's real short. It's a great video. And then I have this video as well, and it's about PrEP. Now, PrEP is a medication that they have come up with, and basically, now there's side effects of it, because everybody's like, well, why doesn't everybody take this? There's a lot of side effects, okay? But for people who are at a high risk of contracting HIV, so say somebody who's in a relationship with somebody, who has HIV, somebody who is a sex worker, somebody who is a known IV drug user. By placing them on PrEP, it actually can prevent them from acquiring HIV. Because it blocks, and this is where the video will explain that. But it's not something we're just going to go and throw everybody on, because there are a lot of side effects. But for the people at great risk, it can be lifesaver. We're going to stop here. We're at 49, almost 50 minutes. I will post all of our videos that I just spoke about, and I am so happy to see all of y'all online. This is wonderful. And if y'all have any questions, please let me know. I'm going to stop the recording. Let's see.